There's a guy in Truro named David Boyle, Microbiologicals, or I forget the name of his company. He sometimes has it, but we got this from a company called Fungi Perfecti, and they're actually pretty far away. They're on the west coast. Yeah, you gotta ship it in, but I won't go into too much detail, but you can't, once you have sort of a starter kit, you can, you don't have to buy it again if you treat it properly.
Kind of perpetuates itself. Yeah. It's actually not that, I don't know, I don't find it,
Now, is there a type of log, preferred log that you would want to use?
Yep, depends on the species, but most of the wood decomposers like hardwood. So oyster, shiitake, maitake, they all like hardwood. And the denser the hardwood, the better. The log will produce longer.
So up here, what type of wood?
We use birch and popple because there's lots of it, and it works.
Maple?
Maple, yeah, that's great. Maple works. Maple's a bit more dense, which is good. Yeah. So the idea is this is a fairly fresh cut log. Usually you want to use it within a week of cutting it, ideally, so that competitor fungi don't get a head start. And each of these little holes that we're going to drill in the log will be an inoculation point. And you've got to make sure you get enough inoculation points so that the mycelium, which is basically the roots of a mushroom, can sort of close themselves off and stake their claim on the whole log, so you don't, again, get any kind of competitors coming in. And as a general rule, you usually space the holes about 2.5 inches apart, sort of in the circumference of the log, and then anywhere from 8 to even 8 inches to 12 inches along the length, because the mycelium actually runs a little easier lengthwise than it does around. And you want to create sort of a diamond pattern. So I've got one here, next one would go here, and then next line would be staggered. So you get sort of a mesh engulfing the whole log. So this is the bag of spawn. And it's just a mixture of hardwood sawdust and grain. And this is what you'd order to get yourself started. It also comes in the form of dowel plugs, so it's little wooden plugs that are already myceliated, and they're a bit easier. You just drill a smaller hole, and then you tap the plug in and seal it, and it's quicker process. But otherwise, you got to use something like this to sort of plunge your mycelium into the hole.
How long will your spawn last in the bag? Like, for how long can you keep it?
Quite a long time. Yeah, yeah. And if you cool it down a little bit, it'll slow it down. It'll slow its metabolism down even more. And yeah, we've had this for a couple months, and it's and it's still ready to go.
Good.
Yeah. And I don't think we've got any here right now. I think Gavin's got it. Hey Gavin, you have the wax? It's important after you plug this to seal it, because bugs and squirrels, and then again competitors will get in there.
Surely not squirrel.
Yeah. And actually, I don't know if Gavin did it, but one trick for squirrels, I guess, is to add a little bit of cayenne pepper to the wax. That's supposed to deter them. Yeah. So you'd inoculate the whole log, and then you'd put it in a shady spot. If you had several logs, you'd sort of pile them in a bunk. You won't get any mushrooms for the first summer. But come early the next summer, your log will start to produce. In the first flush, there won't be too many mushrooms. You might get 2 flushes in the first summer, and the successive flushes will be more productive.
For how long? For another couple of years?
Depends on the wood. Oak is supposed to be the best. We don't have any of that here. That's supposed to be able to produce for at least 6 years. And they say that birch and popple will probably produce for at least 4.
If you have a woodlot, can you just go in the woodlot, look where the mushrooms are going, and inoculate some logs?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few different methods. We're trying out one now where you just collect a wild mushroom. Ideally before it's dropped all its spores, so when it's not quite open. And you soak it in water, a little bit of molasses, and then you've got a spore slurry. You can use that to inoculate your own grain, and then use that to plug logs.
What kind of grain is it?
Ideally sterile grain, so not something that's not going to sprout. We used, what do we use? Barley. Barley's fine, yeah. Or wood chips, fresh wood chips, that works too.
Can you make a slurry with molasses?
A little bit of molasses to sort of activate the spores, and then you can pour that over your substrate whenever you're growing mushrooms on.
When in the summer is a good time to do like after the first year there, like to do the fund or whatever?
Oh, when is
shock
it
it.
good time? Oh, to shock it to produce? Yeah, usually you can tell when the logs are almost ready to produce because they'll start to head out a little bit with some small mushrooms.
Oh,
and
really?
then, yeah, there's a couple different methods you can use to shock the log into production.
Don't you have to dip it in water? Like
Yep.
submerge it?
Yep.
For a couple
Second
months?
summer. For
Second summer,
just
okay.
overnight.
Okay.
Yep. And then sort of row them up somewhere in the shade. They'll start to produce.
You have to water them like the summer if it's too dry?
Yeah, or keep them in a shady spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're right there then. Yeah.
Any other questions?
So is this why you said that you can produce your own after the first year? If you inoculate your log,
Yeah.
and it produces, and then you'll be taking your own mushrooms to make
You can
this,
make more. Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's the slurry that you'll grow on chips.
Yep.
That kind of bag?
Yep. Or just in a cardboard box.
Which start.
Like if you have a higher inoculation rate, if you add more like that slurry, then you don't have to be so picky about sterility. But I mean, in general, to give the mushrooms your best head start, you usually cut them like in a manageable length, and then maybe put sort of 8 lined up like this, and another 8 on top, sort of perpendicular. Yeah. Just to keep them compact and keep the moisture in.
But in the winter, I mean, you get snow and thaw.
Yep.
You wouldn't protect them anymore.
No, not if it's a mushroom that's native to here, because they're used to the conditions. Yeah. They can go dormant just like plants can.
You were mentioning shiitake. What would you do with
They'll
Protect-
actually.
Bill?
Yep, we inoculated some logs last spring, and they made it through the winter and produced this summer. So, yep, I think their natural environment's close enough to ours that they're all right.
Those are oysters.
These are oyster mushrooms.
But that's not native here.
Oysters.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
There are varieties of oyster
There is-
mushrooms
okay.
that aren't native for sure, but oyster mushrooms pretty widespread.
Okay, yeah. There's different kinds because I
Yeah.
tasted one. It's not.
Yeah, yeah, not good tasting, really vigorous strain and harvest it and start propagating it. And there's some good books. I think we've got a couple here on display that would help you do that. So I think we're probably going to take a short break now.
Sure.
And there's some snacks and stuff for people.
Help yourselves.
Yeah.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
I really, I actually have a brother who's an extension agent down in the state.
Yep.
He's really in the mushroom.
Yep.
But I really think up here, there that was done through the land grant university.
Yep.
But up here, we need to, this region, I don't know how we do it, but we need to develop that resource so when people like say, hey, I'd like to grow mushrooms, well, what time,
Yep.
what logs, where,
Yep.
to answer those questions when people call in.
For sure. It is pretty new here, so I think maybe in time.
Yeah, I think it should be one of our, our goals.
Yep.
As groups to try and develop that
Knowledge sharing.
facility somewhere where people can come in and find that information.
Yep.
But I find that people are scared. You mentioned wild mushrooms, and they're all scared. It's
Yep.
poison. It's the main
Well,
thing.
Yep.
you know what you do? You phone up the restaurant in Dieppe, and the chef there will spend time telling you exactly what mushrooms you can eat.
Yeah.
You can bring them in a basket, and he'll classify them, how much they're worth, what you should throw away, the whole works.
Oh,
He'd
yeah.
be glad to do it, because he
Ali
wants
Dil?
to buy your good
The
mushrooms.
Lidl you talking
Yeah.
about? Oh yeah.
I was amazed the time he spent on the phone.
The internet can be a really good source.
Yeah, but it's not for everybody.
No, it
No.
isn't for everybody. That's very true.
Yeah.
But
But it would help.
it's pretty. It can be pretty amazing if you find the right spot. There's lots of information there. I think as far as mushrooms go in the Maritimes, we have an amazing climate for mushrooms. We have
I would
such a.
think so.
I'm convinced there's tons of mushrooms that we haven't categorized at all.
Yeah.
People haven't really they kind of focus on certain regions more, but I think that it's just there's amazing. I see new stuff every time. It's